Lisbon Town Council to order. Could you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Twyla, the roll call.
Counselor Bowie.
Here.
Counselor Bickford.
Here.
Counselor Cody.
Here.
Counselor Pomelo.
Here.
Counselor Lunt.
Here.
Counselor Mason.
Here.
And Counselor LaRochelle.
All right, and our first order of business.
There are no public hearings. Audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium and state your name and address for the record.
All right, please take the podium.
My name is Faye Brown, and I'm here tonight to address you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the longtime members of the Green Thumb Gang, Julianne Baumer, the Casma family, Anita Morenius, Noyce Lawrence, Sherry and Shelley Voigt. On October 6th, 14 years ago, we started this, and it's been extremely successful. But I stand in solidarity with Mark Jones. Mark's job was created to work with us. Unfortunately, under this administration, that hasn't happened. I am appalled that his job has been terminated to just a part-time position. Under this administration, what should have been a happy time is not for me. I've been a volunteer in the town of Lisbon since I was 11 years old, and I think that anyone I've ever worked with on any of the many projects I've done would say I was a good volunteer. I've been jeered at, sneered at, insulted, shouted at, and I don't understand why. And I'm here tonight to announce that I will no longer be associated with the Green Thumb Gang because I can't work with this administration. And it does break my heart, but I just can't work when I don't have the help that I need. And I understand times are tough, but we had such a good working relationship before. It's taken away. I can't do it. I'm 65 years old. I can't keep doing it to the level I was. And this will be very, very difficult to give up, but I am doing it. And I have here tonight 2 parting gifts. One is a matchbook for you, Roger, because at the last meeting you said the best thing to do with the gardens would be to burn them. I know you were joking, but I wasn't laughing. Say it with flowers. Well, I'm saying it. This is for you, Steve. This is a flower that I didn't even plant, but it grew right in front of my barber shop, and I think it's for you. And you can take from this what you wish. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Sorry to hear that news. And we appreciate all the work you've done for this town over all that time.
Dot Fitzgerald, longtime resident of the town of Lisbon. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but this is a sad, sad, sad day indeed. Scott Benson was here, was at last meeting and at the workshop. Huge presentation on the what a great place Lisbon is to work and to live. He mentioned the gardens, what an asset they are to the town. Well, with Faye gone and with Mark Jones gone, they will be no more. And you people have to look to yourselves.
Thank you, Dot. Mr. Fillmore, go ahead.
I agree this is a very sad day for this town. Why is it the workshop agenda and the handouts for the workshop are not available to the citizens in order to follow along during the workshop, like you do for the council meetings. I mean, we sit here in darkness. We cannot speak, but at least we could follow along and know what is going on. Okay, we can't comment during the workshop, but if we had the documentation, we could follow along, and then we came to the council meetings, we would have something to discuss and would be able to talk to the council. As it is now, there are no workshop agendas, and the one that's posted to the calendar at the last one said, if I remember correctly, strategic planning. That turned out to be a LA 911 communications discussion. It also turned out to be the Western Maine busing discussion. So there were a lot more discussed there, that there could have been people in the audience that wanted to know what was going on with those projects had they been announced. So I feel as though it's only appropriate you do it for the council meetings, and why not do it for your workshops so we can follow along and I know we can't speak. Hope I got that, all right? But we can bring it out in the audience participation at the next council meeting if we had the documentation to follow along and know what you're doing.
I think that's, reasonable if we can try to get some of that material out there. I mean, we can't always do it necessarily because it is for the council to discuss issues, but, if we can try to get some of that out there for the public, I'd be in favor of that.
Well, we come here to these meetings because we're concerned,
Yeah.
okay? So if you have handouts that you're giving to everybody else, there are what, 3 of us that came at the last one that were here? I mean, it's not a large volume.
Mhm.
So I fail to see that that's a big issue.
Yeah, no, we'll certainly work on trying to do that. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, can anybody tell me if we've canceled the illegal purchase order issued to FCI? It was not in accordance with the purchase policy of the town of Lisbon.
I don't know.
The amount of that was $5,700. If you look at the purchase order policy that you people approved, anything over $5,000 has to be a formal bid. It was not done that way. Now, we can say that it was done in accordance with the emergency provisions that are in the purchase order policy. And that would be fine, except for the simple fact, it's 6 months later, and there's been nothing done on that purchase order. So I don't understand how anybody can say this was an emergency. I feel as though the $5,700 purchase order needs to be immediately canceled because it was not in accordance with the purchasing policy. And if the fire chief deems it necessary for that funding for that project, he can come back in and go through the purchasing policy that you people approved at the last meeting. Now, has it been canceled? I don't think so.
There was never a purchase order created for that. It was just the money was asked to be appropriated for that particular project, but that particular project has been put on hold until we have some other items to look at, and probably will not move forward from what direction I'm hearing. So it won't be done. And the money was earmarked, but it stays in the general fund, and there was no purchase order created for that.
At the last meeting, you told us there was one.
I did not tell you there was a purchase order created.
Let us move on. Has there been a contract or a purchase order issued to Mr. Van Tynen for the reevaluation of the town?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I have to tell you about a situation that I had this week. And Twyla, by the way, has corrected it, and she issued me the petition this evening. But I came in here on Monday to get a petition in accordance with the town charter, chapter 12, and Twyla informed me that there was no petition available. It was in the town charter. I was following procedures, but there was no petition available. So she told me that there would have to be one created, and that once it was approved, that she would call me, and I could pick it up. She did everything she told me she was going to do. My concern is if we have procedures outlined in our charter and we come to the town office to follow those procedures, those forms should be available to us. Now, this isn't Twyla's fault. I'm saying that she did everything she told me she'd do and she did a good job. But those things are supposed to be in our charter, are supposed to be available to the citizens so that they can comply with the town charter and your guidance. If it's not there, what is it good for?
That's the first I've heard of that issue.
Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
you.
All right, anyone else in public who'd like to speak? Come take the podium and state your name and place of residence.
Hi, Lisa Ward, Lisbon Falls. And I just wanted to mention that I received a letter that was, I believe, CC'd to the entire council from Charlotte Reyna, who couldn't be here tonight because she's recovering from surgery. But I promised her that I would bring it up for her. She's concerned about the lack of local transportation for seniors, and I know you're all aware of it. And I think that the letter that she wrote was direct and to the point, and considered options and seemed open to other kinds of options. Because I know Charlotte personally, I also think that she would be happy to help out with finding a way to make transportation in Lisbon, within Lisbon, more possible, or maybe an idea. So I just wanted to make sure that I brought it up, and I know that Charlotte would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Lisa.
Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to our next item.
Is under the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed for discussion?
Go ahead, Lori.
The minutes of September 20th.
Okay. So the order 2011-183 is to approve the minutes of September 13th and a poll permit for the Bodenham Road.
Oh, excuse me.
So moved?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed 7-0. And the minutes of September 20th, do you just want to put them on the next agenda when you?
I just have a
Well,
clarification.
we can just bring it to make it an order, because we need to amend the minutes there. There's just a
Sure.
couple typos.
All right. And so who wants to make the motion to amend the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second?
Second it.
Thank you. Any amendment?
Ready?
Yep, you need to,
Yep, page 8, under the be it ordered, next to last line is it says be returned to the prior owner. There should be an R in there. And then the next paragraph, all taxes due through and including September, it should be 15th and not the 25th.
Okay.
all right. All those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed 7-0.
All right, I would like to move up to the front of our order of business, the other business, Atlantic Salmon Federation presentation, unless anyone has an objection to that, so that we don't keep this gentleman around all night. All right. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the phone there. I thought I had it on vibrate, but that was my wife saying she got out of her meeting early so she could pick up her child, so that's great. Yeah, up here. But my name is Andrew Good. I work for the Atlantic Salmon Federation, which is next door over in the town of Brunswick, and we've been there for probably 35 years or so. And we're a nonprofit group supported by the angling community. And obviously, as the name implies, our focus is restoring Atlantic salmon. A lot of our work is down east and up in the Penobscot, and for the most part, but we started reaching out a little bit, and we're right next door to the Androscoggin. It goes right by our door as well. So we started looking, we started to see a few more salmon coming back to the river. And so we've sort of put our toe in the water, trying to look at ways to restore not just Atlantic salmon, but really the sort of native migratory sea-run fish to the Androscoggin, just like we're doing in these other watersheds, but probably at a much smaller scale. And so I'm going to talk tonight just a little bit about the fish passage work we've done here locally, and then about more in depth about the Sabattis River. Because that's right now we have an engineering study that we're going to be hiring an engineering firm here in the next week or so to conduct an engineering study around that Mill Street Dam, the Farnswell Dam, which is the lowest dam on the Sabattis River, that's currently owned by Miller Industries. So I just wanted to sort of make people aware of that. But the Sabattis River, as people know, it flows out of Sabattis Pond. There's several ponds in that watershed, and Sabattis Pond itself is pretty big. Historically, the Maine Department of Marine Resources thinks that was a really large producer of sea-run alewives, and blueback herring, which are the two river herrings that we find in all the rivers here in Maine. The state's been stocking it actually with herring since 1983. The herring run in the Androscoggin, for the most part, that comes back to that Brunswick Dam is all coming out of the Sabattis drainage, and it's somewhat amazing to me that they've been stocking it since 1983 and never have really looked at fish passage at some of the dams. But at any rate, there's some opportunities to take a look at that. But this is a project that's with the Sabattis. It's about restoring really the river herring. Blueback alewives, blueback herring, and alewives. The Sabattis it's not a project about restoring Atlantic salmon. But one of the reasons we're interested in is that alewives are critical in these watersheds to Atlantic salmon at several different life stages. So wherever you look, whether it's Canada or here in New England, if you've lost your river herring, you generally lose your Atlantic salmon. So they're what we refer to sort of as a co-evolved species. But let me just go through this. Sea-run alewives, Maine, the Androscoggin River historically has probably 12 different species of migratory fish. By biomass, by abundance in weight, historically, it was alewives and the other river herring that really were sort of the bulk of the fish that were coming up this river. They're found from South Carolina all the way up to Newfoundland. They're up in all the salmon rivers up in Quebec. They're really sort of the base of the food chain, but have really been in decline everywhere. And as a matter of fact, I guess it's NOAA Fisheries is actually looking at considering it as a threatened species, which is hard to imagine because in Maine here we've got pretty vibrant populations. Wherever we've taken out dams or put in fishways to allow alewives into their native habitat, they've responded and the populations have really come back well. Alewives come up in May, up these rivers. They have to spawn in a pond or a lake, so they come up the rivers and they go to a pond or a lake. They're up there for 3 weeks. They spawn. The adults come back out. The juveniles then grow up in the pond or lake there for the summer, and the juveniles come out in August and September. So I've been over to the Mill Street Dam looking there, not for alewives, but we were over there with some other folks one day, and you could just see schools of thousands of these juvenile herring coming down past over that breach in the Mill Street Dam. The best example we have is in the Kennebec. As people know, the Edwards Dam was removed in 1999, but there was a much larger settlement agreement that included putting fishways in 4 dams on the Sebasticook River. And since that time, that alewife, and there's a lot of ponds and lakes in the Sebasticook, that run is now 3 million fish in the Sebasticook, and it supports a very vibrant and growing commercial alewife fishery for lobster bait. The only thing else I would say, I don't want to get into the biology, even though that's a lot of my interest. This year, IF&W, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, documented the largest eagle aggregation in modern times in New England in the Sebasticook. There were 150 eagles that were there during the month of May and June, never mind ospreys, feeding on that restored alewife run. Shad are another species that historically was here in abundance in the Androscoggin, and we still find them. There's still quite a few below the Brunswick Fishway, and trying to find some ways to maybe get them upstream a little bit more. I've already referred to the fact that pretty much everything eats alewives. They're a very high caloric fish, very oily fish. I mentioned that, and here's the little bit of the commercial fisheries that you see in Maine. There is no commercial fisheries south of Maine, all the way. They've all been shut down. But in Maine, I think we've got, I'm not sure how many, but we've got like 27 different rivers that are supporting commercial fisheries. And as we implement some this Penobscot project that we're working on to sort of reconfigure some of the dams, it's going to, we think, explode over time, the alewives up there. So just briefly about the work of the Atlantic Salmon Federation, we only work collaboratively with owners. This was a dam on the Little River on the Brunswick-Topsom line owned by Miller Industries. Obviously, this is what we call low-hanging fruit. It was a small dam, probably in a lot of flow. Salmon could get right back up over that. The Department of Marine Resources has documented American eel, sea lampreys, and Atlantic salmon, all migratory fish coming in from the ocean up into the Little River. What's nice about the Little River, if you go down below that, it really cascades quite a bit. Then there's a big drop where 196 goes over it. That big drop, the pike and smallmouth bass and some of the other non-native fish can't get up that drop. So in the Little River, you've got a lot of pretty pristine habitat for this part of Maine. And actually, and I digressing a little bit, but this year we raised some money along with the Androscoggin River Alliance and tagged a lot of the salmon coming back to the Brunswick Dam, and they've documented some of those salmon going up into the Little River just in the last couple of weeks, which is sort of interesting. So that was not, so why did that dam have to come up? Well, Miller was looking to get rid of the property in the dam. You had some backflow starting to create a problem around the edge of the dam. It probably would take out those trees over time. So it was just something needed to be done there. Pretty easy project. We hired Shaw Brothers to come in, and in 1 week they took the dam out, cleaned up the site, and subsequently Miller has transferred the property to the Brunswick Topsom Land Trust. It's a popular area for, it's a good little spot for trout fishing. I think the state stocks it. There they were removing the dam. That was back in the September of 2009, and that was just this past year with that little impoundment. I can still see the old pump house there. The other type of things we do, as I said, that was a dam removal. Here up in the Penobscot and Blackman Stream, last year we finished building a fishway. This was a site that was open to the public. It was a historic logging museum, and again, we worked with the landowner to design something that fit in with the historic character of that site. We built a rock and pool fishway, and we think over time that this is going to be a real draw. People have been up to Damrascotta Mills over up the road on Route 1 to see that alewife migration in May. It's really worth going over around Mother's Day, anytime in May. But that's open to the public, and it's sort of a bigger version of this right here. But for many places that are more remote, on private property, whatever, you can build these Daniil fishways from that at the outlet of some of these ponds and lakes that allow alewives to get up in right there, a little less expensive. So as I mentioned, in the Androscoggin, I guess the biggest priority for the state for alewives is the Sabattis River. A lot of the ponds are very small, the Sabattis Pond being the biggest. And but currently there are 5 dams there with no fish passage. So we got involved in the Little River Dam, and then based on that, Miller Industries owns the first 2 dams, as probably a lot of folks know, on the Sabattis. And so their representatives started talking to us about, trying to potentially do something there. And this why I'm here is because we don't know what the do something is. That's the work we're going to be doing to try to collectively, I think, figure some of that out. And I'll go into that for a moment. The thing that gets a little bit complicated, and this, this is a little bit of a pain in the neck, but Atlantic salmon were listed as an endangered species. We're starting to see this with all the migratory fish. We have short-nosed sturgeon right below the Brunswick Dam. They're listed as endangered. We have Atlantic sturgeon. They're now listed as threatened. We have different species under consideration. It's a little bit crazy with our migratory species. But Atlantic salmon were listed as endangered. That even though the Sabattis is really a warmer river, it's not Atlantic salmon habitat, it's still considered critical habitat, and that's a much longer conversation about why that is. NOAA Fisheries, and Steve, I got a couple things to leave with you here, but NOAA, it's joint jurisdiction. You have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA Fisheries. NOAA is in the process of developing a general conservation plan for non-hydro dams, because for the most part, any landowner that could take a salmon or injure, harm a salmon is going to have an incidental take permit. So dam owners are going to need to get an incidental take permit, which can be prohibitively expensive, particularly for a private landowner. And so what this general conservation plan will be a sort of a general permit that NOAA or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service can issue to a private dam owner or town for that matter, if they comply with certain provisions. And that is in the process now of being developed. The federal agencies do a terrible job with outreach and communications. So they've already had 3 public meetings, and I haven't been anywhere yet talking to towns where the towns even knew about these meetings. So it's, but that's why we like the federal government to just pass money through and not try to take the lead like sometimes they do. But at any rate, so the bottom line is, and again, I'm happy to come back or discuss in more detail with people the implications of the Endangered Species Act. Hopefully it really won't be felt too much, but that over time, and it will be over a period of time, that likely fish passage would be required at all dams. So that is something to consider. It's certainly not going to be next year or the next few years. I think NOAA's, it's hard to say because we haven't even seen the general conservation plan, but it's something to be aware of. We are involved. Our interest in doing this fish passage work is really outside of the whole ESA, the Endangered Species Act. We've been doing it for quite a long time. We've got under our belt building a lot of fishways, removing several dams. I think we've learned a lot along the way. I think we've got good recommendations of a lot of people we've worked with. And that's our interest here, is working really outside of the regulatory arena to work with landowners and towns as it may be. So the Farnsworth Mill Dam is a complex one. The Little River was an easy one. Then you get the opposite end of the spectrum, and you get this dam, this lower dam. You've got a water main that's located above the dam. You've got mercury contamination that's around that water main. You've got the dam that is it's an older dam, but it's, I guess for lack of it, I call it a breach in the dam, but basically the stop logs had been damaged in a storm, and then Miller Industries representatives basically then put a larger breach in the dam with a ram hoe, opened that opening to lower the impoundment to try to get that mercury out. The problem at the time was they weren't aware of that water main that was there, because that water main goes back a long, long way, and they weren't able to get all the mercury out. They got about 80% of the mercury out, but there's DEP would still like the rest of it to come out, and essentially everything was sort of put on hold a little bit when we came along saying, well, we'd like to see fish passage. Is there a way, some global solution here that where all the parties might be able to find a solution to this site, and that would include fish passage, but also includes these other things. Miller, at least in talking to representatives, does not appear to want to own this dam or the next one up on a long-term basis. They have done a lot of work there, obviously, to take out the mill buildings and deal with some of the environmental contamination, and most of it's done. I mean, it's not that hard to picture that site in a lot better condition down the road. But I think whatever the solution is, I think it's gonna have to involve the town, and it's gonna have to involve Miller, it's gonna have to involve, whoever else. I mean, there's landowners up along that impoundment, as part of this process. So what we're doing, we've been meeting with Miller's representatives for a couple years, and so the first step in one of these type of projects is to do a feasibility study. How do we achieve fish passage? What are the other issues surrounding this dam here? And so it's taken a couple years, but we've raised approximately $60,000 in a combination of private funds and some public grants to hire an engineering firm to come in and sort of take a look at this site. And so we'll be hiring that firm here. We put an RFP out. I'll leave you a copy of that, but it's a pretty detailed RFP. It's gonna, takes a look at the wetlands up in the impoundment. It looks at water levels above the dam, below the dam, hydrologic analysis. For instance, that site is so manipulated because it's so old. You could take the dam out and you still might not have fish passage. So there's, because of the fact it's constricted there's a lot of ledge. What would be the height of the water above when you take that dam out? There's a lot of things going on there. Obviously, there's the water main issue, which to me is, if I had to pick what is the biggest issue there, to me it's that water main in dealing with that in an appropriate manner. I think it's vulnerable to damage right now, but you take the dam out, it would be a lot more vulnerable. I mean, we took a look at it. We did have some money last year, and we did a preliminary study that basically looked at some alternatives and thought that burying that water main there is the best alternative. Right now, it's suspended in the water column a little bit off the bottom. It's not an ideal situation, and it's very old. So, it would be a nice solution to bury that thing there. You've got a little ledge to deal with, but I don't think that's, the biggest part of it. So, so what we're proposing to do is to hire this engineering firm that will look at a feasibility study and look at all these different things over the next several months. They also will be available for 2 public meetings. So we once we have better information here next spring, we'll do a publicly noticed meeting to make sure a letter is sent out to all the landowners upstream of that site. We'll probably want to come back to you folks, or in the meantime, keep Steve up to date. We'll want to bring Miller's representatives in on the picture and saying, what's the solution here. I mean, one of the things I will say is that, one thing you have to consider, the couple of things that stick out is, who's going to own the dam? If the dam was to stay in place, who's going to own it? And that's the problem we see all over the place now is people, don't necessarily want to own a dam if it's not generating income. Sometimes there are other benefits. There's town benefits, other things like that, or there could be wildlife benefits. In the case of the state owns a lot of dams. But that's, that we know that Miller does not appear to want to own it. It's not. So it's whether the town would own it or whether it's better just taking that dam out. And, it's, as I said, every situation's different. I mean, if I had to guess, if you've got 5 dams, and you had the money, to pay for fish passage, it would probably be a combination. It may be dam removals at the first couple and fishways at the next 3. It's hard to say, but you can't really say until you really do these studies and you take in all the social factors as well, what the right solution is. But at least, I'm happy. It took us a little longer than we wanted, but we've got the money for this feasibility study. And Miller's happy, and DEP's happy that, something's moving, something's happening at the site. Because I don't think the status quo really works here. So what we're just trying to do is facilitate something to happen here, and whether that will actually happen, I don't know. I mean, the other thing that's changed is, practically overnight, if you read the papers, a lot of funding for this type of work has dried up. A lot of funding for everything's dried up, and so, 4 or 5 years ago, we'd have all sorts of money in grants to do this type of work. That is a lot more tenuous at this point, but at the same time, the fact that, at the same time, I think there could be funds available in the future for this. So that's why we're happy to continue going down this road to try to bring everybody together, find a solution here that sort of addresses all the different needs there and keep as many people happy as possible. But so that's where we're at. Happy to answer questions. I have some cards on the table. People, and my office is right in Brunswick, Atlantic Salmon Federation, so people are always happy to, we're welcome. People can contact us anytime about this. We haven't, we just got this funding very recently. So until we got the funding, we really haven't done a heck of a lot else. So we haven't reached out to the other dam owners further upriver. We know who they are. The second dam, we have talked to Miller. As part of this feasibility study, the engineering firm, whoever we hire, will do a cursory look at potential fish passage. That next one, there's a lot of ledge, so they'll go in and just sort of take a look at that and sort of come up with potentially what they think would be how you could achieve fish passage there, what type of study might be needed, and that type of thing. So with that, that may be my last slide. Oh, there's the water main right there, you know. Unfortunately, if you think back in 2009, when this mercury remediation was being done, we had a lot of high water. I mean, August, it just, the water never dropped. But Miller's folks, they really wanted to get that done. They're probably being pushed by DEP, and so you just couldn't see that water main. And, you know, here it was a year later, you could see it for a whole month or two of the year just sitting there. That's taken, well, actually, it's on the bank, and the bridge, you know, the Mill Street is right there to the left. You can start to see the abutment of the bridge. So with that, I guess I would take any questions. I've probably left out a few things, but.
All right, anyone on the council have questions or comments there?
I just had and I don't know a lot about it, but I know with the dams and everything over years have actually changed the way some of the fish, Atlantic salmon has gone up and some of the feed that it gets. But how about some of the other species? I know pike has really taken over at Spatus River and Spatus Lake. I mean, that, to me, must change the whole dynamic. So, I mean, you can't, some things will never change because it'd be almost impossible to actually change that natural food chain again, wouldn't it? Or,
Yeah, I mean, we're never gonna see 10,000 Atlantic salmon in the Androscoggin. I mean, and we're not trying to do that. You know, I think they had like 65 or 45 fish come back to the Brunswick Dam, you know, this year, salmon, and, you know, they don't do any stocking. I mean, this is a very ignored river from the states, you know, compared to what the state does with other rivers. They ignore this one quite a bit. So without any stocking at all, we've got a bunch of fish there. And it seems, I mean, the Androscoggin and the Kennebec are well connected. It seems, too, that some of these fish are moving. Some of the fish we tagged went up over the dam, and then were up here for a while, then went back down and showed up at Blockwood, the first dam in Waterville on the Kennebec. So, you know, it seems like, and we do find that with the sturgeon, too. They'll come up the Androscoggin, they'll move down, go up the Kennebec, and they move back and forth a little bit. But I think there is potential here for the herring, river herring, and, you know, potentially shad if you get the right fish passage. And I actually think in the Sabatis, I mean, there's enough habitat to potentially support a commercial fishery. I mean, a lot of our work is with alewives, is where you can get a lot of alewives in the system. So, you know, there is the potential for a commercial fishery. And actually, towns like towns probably make because if there's an alewife harvest, the town has those rights, and you would lease the rights to a commercial bait dealer. And towns around Maine make anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000, you know, essentially leasing the rights to a bait dealer. So, I mean, over time, but that is over time. I mean, we're not gonna, I don't know if we'll be in my lifetime, but we'd like to get interest back in the river. You know, we've talked to some of the, you know, the land trust and the river council, watershed councils, and they're all interested in seeing, you know, some revitalization of Sabatis a little bit. So, again, you know, it's not our top priority, but it's right next door to us, and it is a priority, and so we're gonna go down the road and see what happens.
Yes, go ahead, Roger.
The dam right here on the Little Sabatis River, right here right in the village of Lisbon.
Yeah.
The removal of a dam of that nature would be devastating to the properties above it. I mean, it's not the most beautiful river in the world, but it's one that people of Lisbon have learned to live with very well, and they enjoy that river for snowmobiling or whatever they use it for.
Yeah.
Removal of that dam would bring a great deal of controversy in town.
And when you have that, you know, that's not the reason. I mean, those are the valid reasons not to remove a dam. But aside from that, if we have a lot of opposition, we don't have the resources. You know, we don't have the time to get bogged down, you know, in that either. It doesn't make any sense when you would have that. So, you know, I've taken a look at that dam. I mean, to me, and again, just in a very cursory look, that would be, because of the fact the public can go to that dam, that would be a place where you could actually have a fish ladder with a viewing chamber or some rock and pools that would actually add to the character of that dam, and people could actually see fish going up. And, you know, to me, that's right away, that seems like that would be a potential, the path forward, you know, a place like that.
We've had the opportunity to see what it looks like with the river drain because of whatever reasons,
Maintenance,
working in the area or what have you, and it certainly didn't go over very well.
Yeah, that dam, as I said, the Damariscotta, you know, it's not that far away. It's a great spot to go see in May and June. They have hundreds of people there, you know, on the weekends, looking at that, watching that alewife run.
Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Faye, go ahead.
How come I paddle on that stretch of the Sabattis River 4 times a week, and I paddle for an hour. I've never seen, would I see them? I see all kinds of wildlife.
No, I mean, if they've been there.
That is my favorite river right now,
they-
because there's so much
Yeah, they've been there
wildlife.
since 1983, but you know, the adults are only gone, they go up the river and they're up and back in within a month. And then the juveniles are just that big. I mean, I striped bass fish out in, you know, out in the bay here, and that's what a lot of stripers are feeding on, you know, come September, well, back when we had stripers a few years ago, you know, in September. But, no, you know, it was interesting, when I saw them out there, the only reason I saw them was because that was when, I don't know, Clean Harbors, whoever was doing the cleanup there or opening the breach, they had a jackhammer and they'd hit that cement of the dam, and that noise, that was, the alewives were coming down, and you know, these are just schooling bait fish. They'd all come flying out of the water because they, you know, they're threatened, you know, they're scared, and so you'd see them. The jackhammer would hit, and all this school alewives come jumping out of the water, and then keep going down through. But yeah,
I have one more, just quickly. I thought I was reading the schedule for the pumpkin boat races in Damascus, and I thought they said go watch the alewives on this weekend.
yeah, I saw that too. I didn't see the alewife mention of it. You know, maybe it's the emigration out, but yeah, I don't think you'd have that much there, you know, to see really this time of year. But you know, that's where, you know, in this, you know, as this project goes forward, I mean, I think, you know, you know, there'll be some landowners. There aren't a ton of landowners in that impoundment, considering how populated the area is. You know, it's relatively unpopulated, but you know, there's always some concerns there.
It's a real high visibility area up there
Yeah,
through,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
along the 196 corridor. We'd be concerned about just the looks of it too.
Yeah, yeah, and, but, you know, if you go, we've also got examples where, you know, dams were removed, and it basically, you know, the way it changes, I mean, it changes, it's a change, but, you know, there's still uses with a river as opposed to an impoundment, and, you know, it's different uses, but usually over time, you know, people that have lived there have, I don't know, in some cases, maybe not come to accept it, but in many cases, you know, have come to appreciate it. But it's something you know, you want to minimize and address.
Yeah, I think that's the one, if you're looking for any of them to look for a fish ladder, that's probably the one to consider right there.
Oh,
'cause
you mean the one in town?
The one, right, I meant up here.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
oh,
that
no,
one here,
yeah,
right,
that's
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
it's, you know, there's some, you know, there's some like that where you
Right,
know, it's,
yeah.
you don't even have to have a feasibility study
Right.
looking at fish passage. You need an
Right.
engineering study designing a fishway.
Right.
You know, so we're aware of that, yeah.
Anything further from the public? Anything else from council? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
And, this is that, from NOAA Fisheries, that's what they put out, that nobody, they had these meetings, they were more NOAA fishery staff were than there were people in the public. It was a joke.
Yeah.
And then this is the study that's gonna be taking place at the Mill Street. And I'm actually staying in close touch with the water department, relatively close touch as this goes forward because of the water main there. And if anybody wants, I just pulled these out of the office, these are just, have to do about, talk about alewives. Leave those right there, anybody can pick those up. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Twyla, the next item on our agenda.
To return to council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2011-184, sewer line replacement bids.
Town engineer will address that.
Good evening. Per your request last meeting, put together an RFP and went out to bid, as well as advertised in the paper. We received 2 bids, one from Genren & Genren for $52,100, and one from Ray Labby and Sons for $79,780. Originally in my memo, said there was requesting permission to award to Genren & Genren, but since then, they've kind of opened it up for discussion, I guess. While if need be, they will complete the project this year, but they've requested that we put it off until the spring, partly for coordination with the water project. They're real concerned about, you know, getting the water project far enough out of the way so that they can start their work. And then they offered to lower the price by 7.5% if we waited till the spring. quite frankly, the prices are still higher than we originally planned and kind of originally budgeted. And I guess my recommendation at this point is just to wait and regroup in the spring and either put it back out to bid, or at that time, there's a possibility that we could do majority of the work with Public Works and hire a contractor to help, do the digging and whatnot. So I guess that's my option based on the way the bids came in, because I mean, we had $100,000 that we budgeted to do two projects on 196. One of them was this sewer line replacement, where it was an open trench, and one of them is a sewer lining, where we would line existing sewer main. And that one, we'll do that whenever we can. But the sewer lining is, I mean, we're talking at least $100 a foot for that to happen. And the budget I had come up with originally was based around roughly what when we did the water line on Route 9 and Upland Road, it was about $80 a foot is what it worked out to be. And based on feedback I'd received from contractors, I mean, I was looking at it being around the $80 a foot mark, and we're over 100 right now, so, or right at 100. So I guess I'm open to suggestions.
All right, go ahead, Vern.
How many feet are you looking to reline?
I thought it was right around 600 or 700. And I think but then one of the guys at the treatment plant was reminding me that it was maybe more like 400. So, I mean, when I did the budget, I was originally looking 60,000 for lining, 40,000 for replacement, which is where I came up with my numbers. So I'm pretty sure I was right around 600.
Where's the location that you're looking to line? Is that?
It's down by Reed and Patterson. It's going to be fun.
Does that need to be done before the retiring also, or is that something?
No, it's just that as part of the camera work that we had done, we had identified sections of, it's asbestos cement pipe. It's 18-inch diameter, 14 or 18-inch diameter, and cost for removal and then disposal of the asbestos cement. And the pipe is in fairly good condition. It was a good candidate for lining, but it was something that we wanted to look at doing now versus, I mean, and over the next few years, we'll be bringing it back and to do segments of it, because there's like, I don't know, I wasn't prepared to talk about that tonight, but there's there's a couple thousand feet, I believe, of pipe there that the surface of it is starting to delaminate from inside. And so we're just concerned that that'll eventually deteriorate too far, that we won't have any choice but to dig it up. And we've lined pipe before on 196 and had great success with it. So I'd like to do that ahead of time. But that's one, they go in through the manhole and do everything and come out the other end. So that there's no digging, it's just gonna be a traffic.
What type of window do we have in springtime to actually get it done before they do the retiring?
Well, the project originally was supposed to be in the street, and we've now moved it to the sidewalk. So Lewiston, I've already contacted them. They're looking at June, starting the construction window would be from June on, late June, I believe, for this. And we've only actually got two little sections that we need to get into 196. So we can get that part of it done easy. And I mean, we should be able to get the whole project done within a week, maybe two, depending on who. I mean, if we had a contractor do it, it'd be a week. And depends on how it goes. I mean, Public Works hasn't done some sewer replacement in a while, but it's not something they can't do.
One more question. How long do you think Longchamps has on 196 for the water project? Is that gonna go another month or another few weeks, or? I mean, they have a long section to do.
I mean, they're going to Moody Road, so I mean, at the rate they're going, and if the weather doesn't cooperate, I mean, I know that they're running into, they're gonna run into stuff the whole way, but they're running into all kinds of, drainage, sewer. Luckily, they're on the other side from the gas. But there's just been a lot of stuff that they've only gone, well, you've seen what they've done.
Oh, absolutely. It's gonna be a project. I mean, this stuff's been down there a long time, and they're digging up.
Well, and the weather really hasn't cooperated very well either. So I guess that's the biggest thing. When we originally looked at doing the project, and, we were looking at having the sewer part done before they started the water job. So.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, Mike, sorry, I didn't see you.
So, Brian, I guess what I'm hearing is that we don't have the money in the budget, basically, right?
Not really. I'm not comfortable. We're not without, it'd be one thing if we had maybe the lining price will come in. It was a phone call we made when we put together the budget. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be, it'd probably be
When do you
more
plan
rather
on
than
doing
less.
the lining?
To be honest, I hadn't even thought about it, because I've been focusing on this part of it, but that's something that we can, I gotta talk to the people that do it. There aren't very many vendors that actually do that work, so I've gotta find out what kind of schedules that they have right now.
Is that something you could flip-flop, so that you could maybe do the lining this year?
Yeah, I mean, I will find out.
Then we
They
might
may
know
not
how
be
much more
scheduled
we
for
got
that.
left, and,
Yep.
because I mean, it sounds to me, if we don't have enough money potentially in the budget, then you've got two alternatives. We can either rebid it in the spring, or we can have Public Works do it with the help of, subcontractor type.
To be quite honest, if we do it in-house, it'll probably be less than any of the bids that we received the first round. But,
So, if we can do that and not mess up a whole bunch of other projects we're supposed to be doing, that probably isn't a bad way to do it.
My concern also is just right now, 196 is kind of a mess with the project going on, and there's been a, handful of accidents in that area, and I would just hate to think that the coordination would be kind of tough. I know that unfortunately it took the water department had a lot of planning to do before they started their project, and we've been trying to put this one together, so you would hate to see them, just multiple projects going on at one time and cause too much grief, especially if it's gonna be a traffic hazard.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, we'd have to wait until the water project was probably through the intersection at least before we'd wanna set up another, construction zone, if you will.
Yeah. So I would think that if we have the opportunity to do the lining, and then that would be a definite, and then
Yep.
find out what we have left for money and see what we can do from there.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable to me. Is anyone else
That'd
feel?
be my recommendation.
I guess then
So you need a motion to
I'd like to see a vote to
So we need a
to-
motion?
reject all these bids and regroup.
Okay, do I have a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to reject all bids and regroup as to how we want to approach this within the funding levels we have.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of rejecting all bids? And opposed?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, our next item.
Order 2011-185, election warrant for November 8th, 2011.
This is the warrant for the charter amendments. Just have to vote to approve it.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion from council? All right, all those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed, 7-0.
All right, then the next item?
Order 2011-186, purchasing policy amendment.
If you go to the back, the first page, but on the back, what we discussed at the workshop, we deleted, under formal bidding, purchase contracts in excess of 5,000, we took out the questionable. However, in some cases, it is acceptable to call vendors to get written quotes. Written explanation shall be provided on any variation. So that will always read, purchases and contracts in excess of 5,000 shall require the use of the bid process in this section, period.
Sounds good, makes that clarified. Go ahead, Mike.
Just from I think, to make it more appropriate, I think you need to take out the word normally
Normally, yes, yeah,
as well,
yeah, I see that, yeah.
because there's no other option
Yep.
other than. So I'd make a motion to accept this with the adjustment or removing the word normally from section 8634A.
All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed, 7-0.
All right, and I've had a request on the executive session from the person that it involves. We prefer we discuss that in public rather than in private, so we'll move that to our next item of business. And that's involving the issues that were raised with the counselor. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that.
Can you explain what we're doing here, Mark?
Okay, so there was an issue that was raised regarding the Morse Mechanics about a complaint that was filed with DOT, and that there were, apparently people had felt that that was inappropriate, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Vern.
Myself, and again, due to another letter we received to the council that we need to discuss, I mean, I would prefer to actually go into executive session to discuss the letter, and also discuss this other issue at the time, if possible, and then we can come back and actually discuss anything in public also, but I think at this point in time, to try to take care of a couple of different issues, I think the idea of going into executive session to go over some of these issues would be worthwhile. So I would make a motion that we still move forward with that.
I would second that.
I'm all up to
Yeah.
discuss in public,
Right,
but
yes.
I think there's more than just that one issue that we
There's two
would need to
issues.
discuss.
So is there a motion on the floor by Counselor LaRochelle?
Yep.
Seconded by Counselor Bowe to move into executive session per 1 MRSA Section 405-6A Personnel Matters.
All right, and do I have any discussion about that? I don't-
So we're gonna do it at this time?
What- Yeah, we
Why
can do it
can't we
now.
do it in public? I just don't understand what the issue is.
I mean, it seems to me that, yeah,
There was
Mhm.
the explanation that I would give, I mean, and it's not so much about Mr. Morse, it's more the idea of a letter that was actually written to the council that asked us a question about one of our own members of the council, which I don't think explaining personal matters during open issues, I'd rather discuss it during, going back into executive session. I think that'd be more appropriate for that discussion, and if we wanted to come back and actually open it up after for a discussion, that'd be fine if the person was willing.
yeah, I think we just have to be careful not to do, secret hearings on someone, just like when, Mike wanted a hearing with the recall, we gave him a hearing, so I think,
I don't
we
think it's
just
a
have to be
hearing.
fair to, right, well,
I
you just have
think
to be
this is
fair.
more of a personal matter, because it would be, I mean, to discuss discussions of how we're gonna handle a counselor in public, I don't think is actually the appropriate way also. I mean, whether or not that person wants to or not after, I mean, that would be up to him, regardless, but.
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor, so all those in favor of going into executive session to discuss the issue? And opposed?
6-0, no,
No,
is it
it was 4-2.
5-2.
5-2.
5-0?
All right, well, we'll go into executive session then, yeah.
My question would be, is that something we're doing now, or do we go through the rest of the agenda till we get to that point? But
Pretty quick to go through the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, why don't we just go through the rest of the agenda unless we have anything that's gonna take a lot of time. All right, we'll go to our next item of business.
Is under B, authorization to solicit bids for 3 Village Street demolition.
This is a requirement for us I need authorization to put out bids, an RFP to demolish the 3 Village Street property that we acquired. And once we get our bids in, we will come back to you and ask for authorization to a supplemental out of our undesignated fund balance to pay for it, whatever that amount happens to be, whatever bid you accept.
Mark?
Yes, go ahead, Fern.
One of my concerns I have about the demolition is the idea of not so much the demolition as what's gonna be left after. Unfortunately, we have a corner right now that there is a building that isn't wanted and that needs to be torn down, which is our responsibility, but I think we need to, before we go into it, know what that's gonna look like after it's torn down, whether that's just a dirt hole, or if that's gonna be hot top, or if we have some type of plans to make it look better than it does right now. And I think the financial numbers that we're looking at for tearing down isn't gonna represent the idea of what we may want it to look like after. So I think if we're looking at funding, we need to have a plan, what we're gonna do after, whether this is gonna be hot top and a bigger parking lot, or if it's gonna be grassed over with a fence. I mean, I think that's part of the funding. I would hate just to tear it down and have a big dirt hole.
Well,
and
the
think that
hole,
actually
the
made
hole
it-
will be
yeah.
filled, that's a safety factor,
Yeah.
you have to fill it in. So that will be part of the bid RFP request.
To fill it in. But I would still think that we need to look to see how we're gonna finish that off, that's all.
I would agree with it.
I think at one point there was some discussion about fencing, to put up some fencing there, but if we're gonna send out bids, we should be very specific as to what we want the bid to include. Like you said, is it gonna be landscaping, is it gonna be a fence, is it gonna be grassed area? So, park
The
benches.
demolition will
It'll be a
probably
separate
wouldn't
thing, right.
include that, but
Separate
our
companies.
Public Works Department can do that. You just have to decide what you'd like to do once it's been raised.
I'd just like to have more of a plan than just tearing it down, that's all.
So where's the funds coming from in the budget for this?
Undesignated fund
Undesignated
balance.
funds,
You'll
okay,
have to
right.
vote for supplemental expenditure from the undesignated fund balance, which you
Okay.
didn't budget for it.
All right.
for a motion to actually
Yeah,
put out
just,
bids.
well, all I need is a motion
To
to,
authorize-
authorization to solicit bids for the demolition of 3 Village Street.
I'll make that motion, that we do that.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? And opposed?
6-1. Would have passed.
All right, and the next item?
It's under C, Town Manager's Report.
Tomorrow and Thursday is the MMA convention. I don't know if anybody had signed up, I think Mark has.
I did.
It's a 2-day affair. Some of the staff will be attending that. There's some good learning opportunities for that, and we'll be there to vote on, as members of MMA, on any issues that need voting. So there will be a few people missing throughout this building. I spoke to Western Maine Transportation about trying to come to our next workshop. Everybody seems to be on vacations. I've given him a date of October 25th. He says he can be here for that workshop and discuss the whole process, and he agreed with the spreadsheet. It's pretty darn hard to follow. The issue that has arisen is that they're into their fiscal year currently, and if we don't take action to at least downsize the number of trips that they're making, and they're recommending making only 2 trips a day versus the number, I think there was like 7 trips they make each day at different times, we will eat through our budget within 14 weeks if we don't tell them that they'll spend time notifying the public and their people who ride that the schedule's gonna change. But in the meantime, I'm starting to look at what we had discussed about the cost of a van, what it would take if we just took care of that service ourselves. I want to kind of jump on that before we eat up all our $25,700 that we have. So if it's okay with the council, I'll tell Mr. Kristen that the council is okay with them notifying and moving to a 2 trips a day versus what they had, just to save money at this point.
While we're working in parallel, either with them or on our own to try and subsidize.
Yeah.
Right.
the
Based on the letter that we received,
Yeah.
there obviously seems to be, they're doing about 30 people a day, they said, in Lisbon, back and forth. So, and I know I've received a number of phone calls since I've been here about some senior citizens who are on that pathway, that bus line, that would like, transportation somewhere. Some of them are handicapped and can't get out to the bus stop. So it's really something that seems to be a need within the citizens of this community. So it's something I think we should explore. If we've been budgeting $25,000 every year just for that bus line, we may want to just look at using that funding in another way. And I think we could possibly improve in getting more people. So I'll move forward and try to get together some numbers for you on that.
Sounds good to me. How's council feeling that? Are we in agreement with that it's okay for him to go do that?
I agree with that.
Okay, fine.
We don't
Next,
have a choice, really.
Right,
at this point.
exactly.
Yeah, we
We can
don't-
burn up all our money and then close down halfway through the
14 weeks
year.
is
Yeah.
kind of scary.
Yeah.
Next workshop, we will be discussing roads. Roger's going to be here to discuss a little bit more of a list than we have before. We'll also will have for you in your packets here for this Friday a draft of a fireworks ordinance. It's something that you need to just take a look at and kind of give direction to Roger and I if it's something that you want to consider, or is it too strict, or you just don't want to do it at all. And the other one we have for you to look at is a marijuana dispensary ordinance. The moratorium ran out, and so if you want to do action, we have a draft of an ordinance for you to look at, and it's based on some of the specific areas, but we'll work through that as part of the workshop, and just how you want to handle that, where, if in fact you do.
When is this all taking place?
On the 11th. Yeah.
Well, can we have our police chief and fire chief at that workshop as well?
Yes, I'll make sure they're there.
Their input on those things.
I can. And we've got just some additional things to the ethics policy and that we have, that will be in your box as well, kind of give you direction that isn't in the charter, so. And again, these are open for discussions for you to review. Roger and I just need your guidance of just what you would like to do with it, if anything at all. And once we're through that, we'll get into the property maintenance stuff and try to have more discussion about that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I have.
All right, any comments from council? All right.
Is this council communication?
No, not quite yet, Roger, almost.
I just have a quick question about, are you still getting information back on the streetlight ordinance?
Yes, I'll get
Okay.
some, yeah.
The list of the lights.
I'll add that to this if you'd like.
To the October 11th workshop?
Yeah,
Okay.
just so you can, if we have time, we can discuss it.
Thank you.
All right, and our next item of business, Twyla?
Is under appointments, Order 2011-187, Library Governing Board, 1 member, applicant Robin Tupper.
I make a
Reappointment.
motion to
Absolutely.
reappoint or re-nominate Robin Tupper.
I'd second that.
All right, any discussion?
Kinda crazy not to move
All right,
forward.
I agree. I think Robin's a real asset to that committee, and, yep, I
Absolutely.
definitely move forward with that. All right, all those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed, 7-0.
Like to see she's still on them.
Yep. All right, and our next item?
Council Communications.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Only one thing that I really want to say tonight is that, Ms. Brown, you made a comment earlier this evening that I said something negative to your garden.
No.
Other Roger.
That
you.
Roger.
All right.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I'll take it. I did.
well, I thought it was directed at me, and I was gonna say, I don't remember ever saying anything about burning any gardens.
I did.
But I do want to say, Faye, that it's a very sad day in the town of Lisbon when you leave the Green Thumb Gang. You've been a very, very large asset to that effort, and the gardens are beautiful, and whatever you put into them, I sincerely thank you very, very much, and the town of Lisbon is going to miss you dearly.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Hey, you knew I was kidding when I said that.
And I was too.
Okay.
Back, but it was pretty ignorant.
Well, I stick my foot in my mouth a lot of times, Faye. You know that. You've known me all my life. I have to say, I learned from the best, your brother.
Anything else from council?
Yes, I have a
Go ahead,
couple of
Gina.
things. Moxie Committee has already started meeting for next summer. It's the 30th anniversary of Moxie. We had a great meeting today. We're still a handful of people. We're looking for volunteers, so we can always use the extra help. And Harvest Festival was held last weekend, and it was a small festival, but it was good. It was a family festival, and they had a couple of children's singers there, and the kids really enjoyed it. And once again, Ross needs help with those kind of promotions, the concerts in the park, Harvest Festival, and upcoming is our Very Merry Main Street. We're talking about expanding that in a kind of fun, different way this year. So those committees always need your help. If you have an organization that wants to do some volunteer hours, we'd love to have you. And, it doesn't mean a huge commitment. It may mean only a few hours a month. So we're proud of our town, and we want to continue these things, and so any volunteers we can get, we'd appreciate them. That's it.
I have one.
Go ahead.
As a reminder that the Lisbon Fire Department is having their open house on Sunday afternoon, October 9th, from noon to 4. At this time, the street is being closed up there for a part of it. There's a piece of the World Trade Center steel that's going to be in the Howard Ricker Memorial Park. They're going to be doing a dedication then. So I'd encourage people to stop by the fire department between 12 and 4, but that ceremony for the World Trade Center thing is at 2 p.m. So that was
Is that
in our
2?
boxes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at 2
Did that
p.m.
get changed?
It's on the flyer.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I didn't get.
The whole thing is from 12 to 4, but the dedication is actually at 2
couldn't
p.m.
remember.
Your
So-
chairman's going to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be there. I also want to extend my thanks to Faye for all the work you've done on all the gardens around town. It's very noticeable, and I'm worried about what we're going to do in the future there. And I want to say thank you again for everything you've done. And it's noticed and appreciated all over town. All right. And our next order of business?
Is to go into your executive session.
Mm-hmm.
Did you need another motion?
I think we need another vote, just to be sure.
Okay.
Chairman, will we be returning after the executive session?
If there's anything if we have to actually take any action or anything, then we would be coming back out, yes. I don't know what the council would choose to do.
Okay.
So do I have a motion?
So move.
I believe we need to actually read it out, just to be,
And
because it's.
I'll read it for
yeah,
you.
If you want to read
It's,
it out. yeah.
Per 1 MRSA Section 405-6A, Personnel Matters, Counselor request.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and all those in favor? And opposed?
Okay, it's 6-1.
No, it was 2.
6-2, who's,
No, no.
oh, yours is the
Yes,
second one?
yes,
Okay.
5-2. All right, we may or may not be back, depending on what we need to do afterward.
I would
go in there. I think this is something that the town manager doesn't participate.
Where are we headed?
In the next room there.
Yep.
Padded cell.
Because this is between councils.
Counselors.
I will not be attending.
Okay, all right.
If you need anything,
Okay.
these are, I'll just show you, these are pictures that I took after. And you have
Letter there.
this one. If you need me, I'll be here.
Okay. All right, this stuff here, I don't think.
Twyla?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Frank Groce's daughter bought it.
No way.
I can't wait to get up there, if I ever get up there.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're moving up there now.
Cool.
They're gonna live right upstairs.
Wow.
Running year round. Her husband, I guess her boy.
Hey, Donald, I can take you there from your camp on a four-wheeler.
Huh?
I can take you from your camp on a four-wheeler.
item. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second that.
And all those in favor of adjourning? And opposed? You're adjourned. Oh, we need some signatures here, I believe.